market or the entire shipping market, you can see that in the dry bulk market, we are placed in the dry cargo space. And in the dry cargo market, we are in two size categories. One is the small handy size sector, the 10 to 30,000 size range, and then the supramax sector, where the ships are between 50 and 60,000 tons each. So please keep in mind that we don't carry any containerized cargoes, neither do we carry any liquid cargoes. All we carry are dry bulk commodities. This is a snapshot view of the company at different dates, and it tells you how the fleet has been changing. For example, if you look as of the beginning of last year, we had 21 ships. The average age was 15 and a half, and the average size was 25,000. If you come to the current position, that's the latest as of the 26th of October, we have 34 ships with us. The average age has come down to 11 years. So instead of growing older, our fleet has become younger, and the average size has gone to 31,300. This is a long view of the Baltic Dry Index, and it shows you the index starting out in 1985 and going up all the way to the current position. So if you have a look at the index, you can see that up to and including 2002 or 2003, the index was fairly normal. Post 2003, up to 2008, you could see that we had a super cycle. And after 2008, the market has more or less come back to more of a normalized cycle. If you look at the averages, then the averages sort of show you a better cyclical pattern, and if you were to look at from 2002 onwards, you would see that 2002 would have been a low point of the cycle, 2004 would have been a high point, 5 and 6 would drop once again, then 7 and 8 would be again the super cycle, and then 9, 10, 11 and 12, you can see how the market is correcting and becoming more normalized. Now, if you look at the average for 2012, it's very, very similar to what happened in the mid-1980s when we had the last great recession in shipping, in dry bulk shipping. So you can see that we are today at the earnings level of what was prevailing in 1985, 1986, 1987. But the cost structure today is roughly 4 times more expensive than it was in the mid-1980s. So the pain being felt by the ship owners is extreme in today's earning environment. This slide gives you a picture of the demand side of the equation, and from this you can see, if you look at the extreme right hand side column, you can see that iron ore is roughly 1/3 of the market share. Thermal coal and coking coal put together is another third roughly, and thereafter you have grains and other bulks which make up the balance third of the market. Please keep in mind that the handy size sector is only in the grains and other bulk part of the market, while supramaxes do carry coal, and they also sometimes carry iron ore, but quite rarely. This chart shows you the seasonality factor. If you were to look at the seasonality in terms of the blue line, which is the average between 1985 and 1999, you can see quite clearly that during that period of time, there used to be always a very sharp slowdown during the summer months. And the reason for that was twofold. Firstly, the OECD countries generally go on holidays during that time of the year, and since they're all based in the northern hemisphere, their holiday season is the same. And as a result, a month or so before the factories shut down for the holiday season and a month after the factories reopen, bulk commodity movements slow down. Secondly, the grain movement in the southern hemisphere generally completes by the month of June, and the grain movement from the northern hemisphere only starts in the month of October. So between the months of July, August and September, in general, grain movements come down quite sharply, and as a result you can see that the cyclical or the seasonality of the Baltic Dry Index is very clearly defined. Now, post the turn of the century, something different happened, and that was China. Once China came on and became the manufacturing capital of the world, the seasonality pattern sort of changed. We still had a sort of a weakening in the months of July, August and September, but it was never as sharp or pronounced as prior to the turn of the century, because in China there are no major holidays during the summer months, and their factories are running at full speed during that time, and therefore raw materials going in and semi-finished and finished goods coming out of China continue at a normal pace. But if you look at the month of February, when China goes for their annual Chinese New Year holidays, you can see how sharply the market corrects during that time of the year. But the correction is very short. It doesn't last for a long time, because in Asia, when we take holidays, it's for a week or maximum 2 weeks at a time, and thereafter everything starts to come back to normal. Unlike the Western world, where their holidays are between 1 and 2 months long. So you can see the Chinese New Year impact on the seasonality is very pronounced during the months of January and February. But it's a short, sharp 1 week, 2 week type of slowdown. Now we're going to discuss the supply side. So if you look at the supply side and look at the slide that I've put up for you, the first takeaway is that as of the end of the third quarter, there were 10,305 ships in the world in the dry bulk space. The average age was just 10.7 years. The total deadweight tons had increased from 622 million tons at the beginning of the year to 677 million tons by the end of the third quarter. And the average size of the ship had now reached 66,000 tons almost. If you then look at the lower part of the slide and look at the changes that have taken place between each of the sectors in the market, you would see that by deadweight ton terms, the small handy size sector had actually shrunk by almost 4.5%. Whilst if you looked at the cape size sector, you would see that it had grown by a gigantic 12%. So within the dry bulk space, you can see quite clearly that the supply side in the small handy size sector is actually weakening, whilst the supply in the larger sectors is increasing quite sharply, especially in the Panamax sector. The supply is going to get further enriched, because if you look at the balance or the last quarter of 2012, there is another 55 million deadweight tons of ships still to be delivered. Next year, there is a 63 million deadweight tons of ships still on order. And thereafter, the supply starts to drop down quite sharply. Again, if you look at within this sectors, you would see that the maximum supply